So our subject today is, as you know, clouds. And of course, the context of nature meditations in 2021 is different from the context of nature meditations in 1921, which is when the nature meditations were first communicated. We know now that greenhouse gases are accumulating in the atmosphere. They were already accumulating 100 years ago, but how much more so now? And of course, we know through direct observation, but also through all kinds of scientific reports, we know about the many ways in which our oceans have become badly polluted, the way in which ancient forests have been destroyed. We know about the rapid extermination of innumerable species. So we know we're living in a world that is ailing. The planet Earth is ailing right now. And so there's a poignancy in our nature meditations. On the one side, there is, of course, the delight that comes with celebrating the bounty of nature and bearing witness to the variety of colors and sounds and impressions of beauty that reach us from the horizons. But there's also a certain reckoning in it for us, and an acknowledgement, a deepening acknowledgement, I think, of our responsibility. But those two things aren't unrelated, the celebration and the sense of responsibility. Actually, the more that we genuinely celebrate the living beings that surround us, the more we can be moved to be faithful stewards. And this is our purpose in these gatherings. As you know, we've been meeting for weeks now. And I hope that this is something that is becoming more and more clear in your own life and living in your life, the way in which we have the opportunity to exchange our perceptions of what is most true and living and vital in this world around us, and how all of these living realities are interconnected, dynamically interconnected and interdependent, and what that calls forth from us. So today, clouds, and clouds are a subject that, of course, atmospheric study, the scientists have studied for some time. Actually, one of the two founders of the Gaia hypothesis, James Lovelock, was an atmospheric scientist. His partner, Lynn Margulis, was a biologist. But what the Gaia hypothesis posits is a profound relationship between the atmosphere and the biological component of the Earth. Now, scientists are running different models to project the outcomes of climate change, and it seems that the models anticipate a dissipation of cloud cover, less clouds in the future. And this has a complicated consequence, because clouds are a little bit ambivalent with regard to the heat of the atmosphere, because on the one hand, clouds reflect, in the daytime, the clouds reflect light back from the sun. It bounces off the clouds. So that has a cooling effect. But then at night, the clouds act like a blanket and preserve heat. There's a warming effect. But the general sense I understand now in the scientific community is that generally the the cooling effect of clouds is greater than the warming effect. So that as clouds do dissipate, that is going to just further quicken the heating of the world. So, as often as we might look up into the sky and grumble, oh, another cloudy day, we could remind ourselves that clouds have a sheltering, cooling effect that is in fact quite important for us all. Now, cultures throughout the world, societies throughout the world, have looked to clouds as bringers of rain and have sought their presence precisely because, especially around the equator, the earth gets very hot, and Pandit Srinivas Ji was sharing about how warmly clouds are welcomed in monsoon time to irrigate the parched land and quench the thirst of the thirsty. Clouds are a godsend, and this is true in many arid lands, and there are many religious traditions that foster prayers for rain. In Islam, Salat al-Istisqa, the prayer for being given to drink, literally, to be given to be quenched by the rainfall of the clouds. And in the Atharva Veda, the Parjanya hymns similarly beseech rain. And on Hopi lands, Kachina dances are a part of an extended ceremony which elicits rain in the desert. So these are all examples of how prayers for rain are a great part of our human tradition all over the world. And clouds then come to symbolize, and do symbolize, mercy, the mercy of the water of life after a long, dry time. And this is something that Maulana Rumi speaks about very eloquently in the third book of his Masnavi. And he says, Ab kamju tashnagi avar bedast. He says, seek water less. Don't seek water, but get thirst. So instead of going out and trying to obtain water, going out here and there looking for water, go into your thirst. Go into the depths of your thirst. Really want it. Go into your longing. That's the prayer for rainfall. It's the prayer that arises out of a parched heart. Let your heart be parched. Feel that longing. So all too often, or very often, we are constantly looking to satisfy every appetite, even before we feel the appetite. We just get in a habit of consuming or satisfying wishes left and right before we even feel that wish. And then we're just very much gliding along the surface. But what Rumi is telling us here is go right deep down into desire before you try to satisfy it. Just dwell in it, know it, plumb the depths of it, thirst well, thirst deeply. And then, yes, then the cloud will come and quench your thirst with the most delicious and purest and sweetest water. He says, in all of us there are these crops, which is to say, Murshid speaks of them as the lataif, the subtle centers. There's dormant faculties in us that are like dried up seeds and roots within the body. And when they're irrigated, when the breath takes in fresh rain, these seeds and roots produce little sprouts that grow into lush verdure. And that's how that's how we find ourselves in the garden eventually, is by tending to those dried up seeds. And how do you tend to them? You have to feel and know the desiccation, but not just negatively, not just as an affliction, but you have to feel thirst, this wanting of water, before reaching for water, before getting water, just thirst and thirst and thirst well. And then what comes is this gracious downpour.